Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing us another fantasy football video. It's into week 12 here, so I'm going to be going over the waiver wire this week. A lot of names I think that are actually really important. Typically speaking, if the waiver wire is good one week, it kind of means that we had a lot of injuries the week before, which is never necessarily good, but it does obviously open up and make the waiver wire a lot more exciting this week. So I think there's a lot of really important players to touch on, guys that I think can really be difference makers for us over the next several weeks and potentially end up being the reason you make or miss the playoffs. So really important players here. If there's anybody that has a specific question, specific add or drop questions, fab questions like that, let me know in the comments below. I love helping you guys out there, and hopefully you guys enjoy. Let's get into it. We'll start things off here with the quarterback position. You have Jacoby Brissett here, who stands out just a little bit. You've obviously got the phenomenal game he just had against San Francisco, broken NFL record for completions, and we've just seen that this is a team in Arizona that continues to fall behind, and they're willing to air it out. They don't really have a running game. They have enough in terms of pass catchers with Trey McBride. Michael Wilson clearly broke out this last week. Marvin Harrison Jr. should be back as soon as maybe this week, maybe the week after the appendectomy. Or I think that's the right term. Anyway, point being, you're going to get Marvin Harrison back here at some point. I think they get Jacksonville this week. It's not necessarily a scary matchup, although they did just shut down the Chargers. But Brissett's playing well enough, running a little bit. I think you could do a lot worse than Jacoby Brissett if you just had to throw him into your quarterback one spot. Brock Purdy, good enough, right? He gets it done typically as like a low-end quarterback one. Plays Carolina this week, was likely dropped up until this last week just because he hadn't been playing. So he's a guy that's probably available and should be useful enough. And then Trevor Lawrence has a relatively soft schedule coming up. Runs enough, actually, just tied his career high in rushing touchdowns on a season. Obviously, we're only halfway through the year about, so some upside there. And then he should get Brian Thomas back here at some point. Hopefully, comes back this week. I think, it can't hurt to get him back. I'm not saying Brian Thomas is going to come back and be an elite asset for fantasy, but him returning to the lineup can't hurt the offense in general. So just keep that in mind. I think Trevor Lawrence is a decent streaming option this week if you need him. Moving on to the position that I think is about as loaded as it's been at any point this season. Running back has a ton of options available. We will start things off with Emmanuel Wilson. We had Josh Jacobs leave last week with an injury. I think it sounds like, they're saying not serious, but it seems significant enough that we should expect Josh Jacobs to probably miss this upcoming week. You get a plus matchup here for Green Bay. Emmanuel Wilson's just playing well enough, and in this offense, he's going to be effectively a featured back. I know you'll get Chris Brooks in there, but Wilson's the clear handcuff here. He's a guy that gets utilized enough. They use him out of the backfield as a pass catcher. He's a good enough player in an offense that really is going to need him. So Emmanuel Wilson, if Josh Jacobs is going to miss, would slot in as basically a rock-solid running back too, and a guy that I would want to get into my lineup. Sean Tucker, I got to mention him because he just looked phenomenal this last week. You get a matchup with the Rams this upcoming week. Not exactly a good matchup, but not a horrible one either. We just saw this last week that Sean Tucker's clearly talented. He seems to have clearly usurped Rachaad White on the depth chart here. So even though Bucky Irving's coming back, it wouldn't necessarily make sense for them just to go fully back into Bucky here. It would make sense for them to ease Bucky back. And Sean Tucker's good enough that I think he'll have some sort of a role. And if we see Bucky miss more time, Sean Tucker would be a reliable running back too. Devin Singletary, not exactly an exciting play, but he does clearly have the goal line role wrapped up here in New York. So not that New York's going to find themselves on the goal line a whole lot, but just having that upside of a touchdown, it's nice to have as a guy that you could use as a desperation running back too. Kenneth Gainwell has been good whenever he's been given the opportunity. We had Jalen Warren leave this game last week with an injury. He said he could have come back if he had to, but we'll see how things go there. If Gainwell ends up getting an opportunity here, we've seen that he's just been really good when given it. So Kenneth Gainwell's a guy that you would feel pretty good about playing if you had to. Bashal Tutin, this one's tough because he left the game last week with an injury, but he was quietly taking over last week. Was outplaying, out-snapping Travis Etienne. There's a chance he's just the starting running back in Jacksonville, even if Etienne is there. So Tutin's a guy that you definitely need to be rostering because, that kind of shift could be happening right here, and it would definitely make Tutin valuable. Chris Rodriguez just seems to be the starter here in Washington. It's not a super valuable asset, but, he's running well, running hard. If they do get to the goal line, he should have the goal line roll over Bill as well. Not necessarily a team that's going out there and putting up a lot of points, but their defense is bad. They're having to play catch up a lot. This team's going to need to score some win for. They're not going to win very many games, but a running back getting the opportunities he's getting just shouldn't really be on waivers. He's more of like a really low-end running back 2, running back 3, a guy you can play if you have to. Trey Benson, I'll mention him one more time, one more week closer to being back. We still haven't heard exactly when he should be returning, but when he does return, I think he's just clearly going to be the running back one there in Arizona. We even had Amari DiMercado leave this last week with an injury, so that just lends itself even more towards Trey Benson being valuable once he returns. And then all the handcuffs, right? So, you've got Tyler Algier, Blake Corum. Like we're seeing this week that Emmanuel Wilson, Kenneth Gainwell, Bashal Tootin, these players end up being really valuable if there's an injury that happens to the guys ahead of them. And that's the easiest path towards getting a high-end producer off the waiver wire right now is just having that guy. So all the main handcuffs, like I mentioned, Blake Corum, Tyler Algier, if you want to roster Tank Bigsby, those kinds of guys, they're the kinds of guys that end up winning leagues down the stretch because an injury happens. You get a spot start in week 16 or 17, and they end up just pulling you out of games. So make sure those guys are on your roster at this point. Moving on to the wide receiver position here, I think we have a couple names that are worth noting, although nobody really stands out to me the way they did at the running back position. We'll start off with Christian Watson, who just seems to clearly be the wide receiver one in Green Bay right now. Dobbs and him both ended up with 4 receptions in this one. Dobbs just not used near the red zone the way that Christian Watson is. Christian Watson's also the guy that's used downfield a lot more. I had 2 really bad drops out of Dobbs as well, so I think Christian Watson's the guy you can play for sure if you have to. Michael Wilson, tough to really evaluate this one. Went out there and had, I believe, 18 targets. Had 180 receiving yards and a touchdown. Michael Wilson, clearly a good player at this point, but it's tough to know if there's anything really prescriptive going forward here. We should have Marvin Harrison back. Michael Wilson's clearly the wide receiver 2 there, the number 3 target. Number 3 targets for Jacoby Brissett are not historically super valuable, but tough to ignore that. Darnell Mooney in lieu of the Drake London injury, which we don't know how bad it is yet, but it sounds like we're going to get at least 1 week without Drake London. With that being the case, it just means that you could potentially play Darnell Mooney. I would want to see it before I really go there, though, in general, and then by that time we might get Drake London back, so it's tough to really know if that's going to be something we can use, but if you're in a real bad spot, I could see yourself really needing to go towards Mooney. Alec Pierce, got to mention him just because he's been so good. It's been rough, though, because you have them coming out of their bye now, and then you get Kansas City and Houston over the next 2 weeks. It makes it tough to really rely on Alec Pierce as an asset over the next 2 weeks. But when we get into the playoffs, he's still a guy that I would want on my roster. So I think he should be rostered for sure. But if you need to start over the next couple of weeks, I would still prefer a guy like Christian Watson, probably Michael Wilson over the next couple of weeks as well. It just makes it tough to really get super excited about any of that there. Tyrell Shavers, just want to mention him, has a bad matchup this week against Houston, then he gets Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and New England. He looks good when he's been given opportunity. He's not a special player by any means, but he's an athletic player. The Bills clearly like him. You have Keon Coleman dealing with the off-the-field issues. That's why they gave him a 1-game suspension, like a team suspension this week. I bet Coleman goes right back there, but the Bills' offense looked phenomenal this last week. So I think Shavers is a guy that's just someone to keep an eye on. He's not a guy that I'm picking up and starting right away, but he's a good enough player that I would want to keep an eye on him, especially in deeper leagues. And then Luther Burden, just slowly getting more and more involved. This Bears offense has been really tough to read, but they just played a really good Vikings defense. I don't want to overreact to how this last game went. And Burden's a guy that's good enough that I do think he's someone, he's talented enough that I think he needs to be rostered. Moving on to tight end here, got 5 names I want to highlight. We will start off with Mark Andrews. He just has a phenomenal schedule going forward. He's always live to score a touchdown. He scored a touchdown in a bit of an unorthodox way this last week with a rushing touchdown. But he's a guy that takes the ball from under center for their tush push. So you got at least that is an additional little boost. Not like a 30-yard rushing touchdown out of it, but he could legitimately get a 1-yard tush push touchdown at some point. Also just super utilized in the red zone, so we like that. And again, the schedule going forward is absolutely phenomenal. Colston Loveland continues to be involved. He just looks good. Cole Kmet's annoyingly involved as well, so it makes it tough. But I think Loveland's a guy that we could roster going forward. A.J. Barner for the Seahawks, just tough to ignore. Had 10 receptions for 77 yards in this one. He's a good player. They use Elijah Arroyo a bit as well, but Barner's clearly the number 1 there. And Darnold's not going to throw 4 picks every game. They're going to be better going forward. I think he's a guy that we should at least keep an eye on. Juwan Johnson, clearly really important to this offense here, especially with the departure of Rashid Shaheed. This entire offense is effectively Juwan Johnson and Chris Olave now. And if Tyler Shutt can play okay, then Juwan Johnson's a guy that we could at least use as a lower-end tight end 1. And then Darnell Washington in a deeper league, I just want to mention him, especially if you're in a point per stiff arm league. Kind of a joke there, but if you saw that really cool play he had against Cincinnati this last week, he's just huge. He's always a threat to score a touchdown. They're using him a little bit more. If you're in a really deep league, I think Darnell Washington is a guy at least to keep an eye on here. And last, but certainly not least here, we've got defenses. We'll start things off with the Browns. They're obviously an elite defense. I think Myles Garrett has 15 sacks right now in the season. That's as many as a lot of NFL teams. So Myles Garrett's playing phenomenal. They also have a great schedule going forward with Las Vegas this week and then Tennessee 2 weeks from now. And the Niners and Chicago aren't exactly horrifying matchups either. You just saw the Browns do really well against the Baltimore Ravens. So if the Browns got dropped because of the bad matchup last week, they absolutely need to be rostered. The Lions played pretty well this last week against the Eagles. Then you get the Giants this week. Could be another week of Jameis, who I know he only had 2 turnovers this last week, but realistically could have had like 5 or 6. So the Lions are definitely in line for a big game next week. The Seahawks, this is a really important one. They have been phenomenal over the course of the entire season. It's possible they got dropped this last week because of the potentially scary matchup with the Rams, but they get Tennessee, Minnesota, and Atlanta over the next 3 weeks. All 3 of those teams playing quarterbacks that have a shot to not be starting for that team next year. So definitely something to look at there. The Ravens get the Jets this week. We love that. The Raiders get Cleveland next week. It's tough to ignore that one as well. Buffalo gets Houston this week. It could be another week of Davis Mills. I know Buffalo's defense hasn't been phenomenal so far this year, but they're really weak against the run, and Houston doesn't stand out as a team that's going to be able to run the ball on them. So I think Buffalo is still a decent play if you have to go there. And then the Jaguars get the Cardinals this week, and then the Titans the following. Played really well this last week against the Chargers. I think they're a team that you could certainly pick up and use if you had to. So that'll do it for the waiver wire this week. Up next, we'll get into some trade targets for you guys. We'll go over players that I've been looking to grab ahead of the fantasy playoffs and all that. This is a really popular trade deadline week, so I'll make sure that I give you guys the best information I can there. It's about the last chance you guys might have to make some trades to really get your rosters set for the playoffs. So stay tuned for that video. We'll also get into starts and sits, of course. Then we'll also cover defenses this week. So once a year, I like to get into defenses that I'd be looking to target for the fantasy playoffs. It's that time of year where I think we want to start thinking about it, getting those defenses stashed so that we can really be set for weeks 15 through 17. So stay tuned for all those videos. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you guys don't miss them. Give this video a thumbs up if you made it this far. It helps me out quite a bit. And drop any comments or questions if you have them. I'll catch you with the next one, guys. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.